Hi, my name is Milorad, and I wanted to discuss the changes to the size mechanic in Dominion 6. I've been very excited to talk about this because I think it's really shakes up a lot of the gameplay. If you're new and you come across this video, you're going to be like, what the hell is he talking about? So this is really meant for people who played Dominions 5 because we're going to be discussing changes to size um, from 6 as it is relevant or as it relates to 5. So you kind of want previous experience if you're going to be watching this. Okay, so let's get right to it. A lot to cover. I'm going to be going over the general changes and how it affects like all nations, and then I'm also going to talk about um, very specific nations that I think have either been buffed or penalized, debuffed by the size changes. Okay, so now in the past you could have a maximum size of 6 per square in combat. Now it's 10. So Illwinter has changed a lot of sizes. So like the former size 1 are almost all size 2. The former size 2 are almost all size 3. Size 3 are either 4 or 5. 4 is usually 6, and so on. And there's lots of specific cases. So like Illwinter said that their philosophy for this was they wanted granulation. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but what they mean is like you have with 10 size spaces as opposed to 6, there's a lot more you can do with different units of different sizes, right? So let's start with size 1. There are no longer any size 1 recruitables except for EA Jabalba. Okay, so like Vedi are all size 2. So in some way this is a debuff because you no longer have 6 units per square to attack, so you have lower attack density. But in some ways it's a buff because now for the same amount of gold you cover more space on the battlefield, and your guys are now you don't lose 6 Vedi when a fireball lands in the square. So then let's look at Jabalba. Here we go. So this is the only recruitable size 1 unit in the game. I double checked this by going to the Dom 6 mod inspector and doing a tag search for size 1, and I can confirm. Now for summons, there are some size 1s. For retinue units, there are still some size 1s, but that's the only recruitable one. Okay, so that's a big change. I think the nations most impacted will be, of course, the Vedi and the Bakemono for Yomi and Shinuyama. Okay, so then the other big change is with the mounts. So now you have variable size, right? So let's look, for example. Okay, so here's a mounted herdman. Oh, that's not the sacred one. Hold on. Helheim. Okay, here. Okay, so you can see now under size 3 and then parenthesis 5. So the mount, his own unit, size 5, but the rider is 3. So goodbye to repel builds for Sacred Spear Cavalry, because now if you click on size you can see where does it say that? Oh, it's under length. Okay. So units with size 6 plus will receive length bonus to any weapon that has length 1 or more. So in Dom 5, you could take Spear Cavalry, who are sacred, or really any size 3 troop, do a larger bless, and they would get a length bonus to their weapon. Now you can't do that with Sacred Cavalry because the mount is the one that has size 5. So like the rider will go up to 4, the mount goes up to 6 with the larger bless, but the rider doesn't get the length bonus to the spear. So that's an important change. Now, most mounts are 5, like a horses, but not all. So, like, let's look at Saramashia. Yeah. So you see all the horses size 5, but the lizards size 4. Okay. So a tiger rider for MA Bandar log is also size 4. So for them, you might say, well, that doesn't really matter. However, what it means is that you can't fit anything else in a square with 2 size 5 cavalry, but you have 2 free spaces for size 4 mounts. Okay, so what that means is imps and swarm bugs are size 2 or smaller, so they can fit in a square with size 4 mounts, for example. So Saramashia, for example, he can cast both swarm and imps, and they can fill a square with a size 4 mount, but not with the horses, right? Now, most chariots are size 6. Okay. It's not that much of a change, but what's interesting is that in Dominion 6, they introduced the concept of displacement. So larger units will displace smaller ones, I think if they're at least twice their size, which includes mounts, okay? So that means that chariots and, let's see, oh yes, I was testing this with LA Agartha. Where is it? Okay. So the Cave Knight, size 6. So he is twice the size of the infantry. So what will happen is now, if a larger unit is stuck, in Dom 5, they would get stuck behind, like this guy would get stuck behind 3 infantry, right? But now, the Cave Knight, who's slower, combat speed 7 versus 8, right? Or in this case 10. When they catch up to the front line, the Knight, because his mount is so much bigger, will move forward and displace 2 of the infantry who will switch spots with him. So, this is very interesting because it allows for some tactics that you could not previously do easily. So, the chariots can retreat, not retreat because they'll trample on retreat, but the chariots can withdraw through your front line, or in the case of Vedheim, here we go, Moose Rider is size 6. So because he's got the mobile archer, which is the new trait, they can do fire and keep distance, and they can retreat through your front line of infantry because the infantry are only size 2. So it will displace them, but they don't get stuck on them, right? So it will allow for like a screening force of a mobile cavalry, right? So then you can like move them back through the line. So like not everyone going to be excited about that, but I think it allows for new tactics. Okay, so what else is important to talk about before I get to specific nations? Air Elemental and Earth Elemental have both received the debuff, right? So in Dom 6, they in Dom 5, sorry, they were size 6 when you cast them with the level 5 spell. Right? So like a level 5, you would cast a Summon Air Elemental, right? But now it does not make a size 10 Air Elemental. It gives you a size 7. So there are certain units that out of the box, the Air Elemental, Earth Elemental cannot trample, right? So like, where is it? Anakites, right? Ashdod. So he's size 7. So a brand new air elemental before it takes any damage cannot trample Anakite because they're the same size. Same, funnily enough, is the Machaka. The spiders are now size 7. So the mount can't be trampled by an earth elemental or air elemental. And then it's even worse for both of those elemental because when they get hit, they shapeshift, down. So now size 6, they go from 7, and they can no longer trample the Jotuns, right? So like before, you would go from size 6 to 5 as their elemental took damage, and he could still trample size 4s. But now it can't. So this is, I think, across the board debuff for air elemental and earth elemental without question, right? Okay, so now that I've talked about some more things I wanted to discuss before I get into specific nations. So imps, the imps that you summon with this spell, summon imps, they are size 2, right? So in some ways that's kind of like a debuff because they can't fit as many into a square. But what's important now is because of the changes to the system, the size system, they can share squares with 2 size 4 units, right? So like in Dominions 5, if you have a size 3, they fill the whole square, and imp cannot share a space with them. But now many of the size 3 are size 4, so they can share a space with an imp. So it really helps add a density. So for example, early age, Lanka, right? All the Bandar are size 4, and all the demons are size 4, right? So now you can have 2 Palanksha in a square, and an imp can fill a space, right? So in Dom 5, that was not possible because they were size 3. But in Dom 6, it is possible, right? And, people say, like, well, who cares, right? But think of it this way. In a Dom 5, each of these guys, if they were facing, let's say, 2 other size 3, right? Each of them had a 50% chance to be targeted, right? But in Dom 6, if they share a space with an imp, now, the Palankasha, they have an 80% chance that either of them will be targeted, and the imp has a 20% chance that they'll be targeted. So in essence, it means that each of the Palanksha will be less targeted. So it's kind of like a buff. Like imagine if there was a bless that said your enemy will not do anything to you 20% of the time, right? So that's kind of what I mean, like the changes to the density, changes to size system allow for more variation in density. So this is really cool for size 4 units because they can share a space with imp or swarm bugs. So like a swarm bugs, most are size 1, some are size 2. So that will help because they can fit in a square, right? Let's consider another spell is less, you see it less, right? Construction, Clockwork Horrors. So these are size 2, so they're supposed to be like the same size as Hoburg. So they can, they're cheaper to make in Dominion 6, right? Because a lot of the summons got buffed, right? So you get more now. So Clockwork Horror, because they're size 2, it's accessible to all Earth nations. They could fill a square with 2 size 4s, which you could not do in Dom 5, right? So you have 2 size 3s in Dom 5. They block the whole square. You can't put the Clockwork Horror with them, right? But now you can, right? So, for example, like who's a, let's see, oh yeah, Naba, right? So, where's Naba? Here. So these guys, right? Two size fours. Naba has a easy access to Earth. Well, like sort of easy access to Earth, right? So you can like make, yeah, like well, let's see, who has a good Earth? Okay, this guy can random Earth, right? So you could like build the Clockwork Horrors if you wanted to, and they can fill in squares with these guys, right? Um, Now, like, that's not the best use of your Earth gems, perhaps, but it's a use case, right? Okay, so that was kind of a general. Um, oh yes, sorry, one more before I talk about specific units. So there's a new spells um, under conjuration. Let's see. Oops, a freaking wind zip. Okay, here. Nest of Salamander makes a salamander asp, and nest of asps makes a asp, right? So these are combat spells for gems, and they make size 1 units, right? So um, size they can fit 3 humans, right? Size 3 will be 9, so they have a 1 space left over, right? So you could put asps, either 1 asp in a square of 3 size 3 humans, or you could put 2 asps in a size of 2 square of 2 size 4, right? And the asp is, I don't have the Mon Inspector open, but the asp is really dangerous because he has a um, death poison on the bite, right? So 35 poison damage, but it has terrible stats, right? So what you do is like the asp will like hide in the square with the bigger units, whether they're size 3 or size 4, and the asp won't be targeted as often. So you can sneak through like asps, and they might bite your enemy while they're fighting the larger units, and the 35 poison damage is fatal. Like, even if you have a poison resistance, it's pretty much fatal unless you have a ton of HP. So like, very cool. This would not have been possible in Dumb 5 because 3 humans would have filled the square with no blank spaces, and 2 size 3 would have done the same, right? So very interesting. Okay, so now I want to talk about um, kind of, I made a notes for specific nations. Sorry, 1 second. I'm looking at my phone with my notes. Oh yes. So first, I want to start with Shinuyama, right? Okay. Okay. Here. So Shinuyama is interesting because they have access to a size 2 recruitable and size 4 recruitable. So, 2 Dai Bakemono can are size 4, so they fill 8, but it leaves a space for Bakemono Sho, right? So now they're even better than before. So you have like 2 of these guys with the swords, or really most people use the archer, because why not? It's basically the same stats, but you get a bow. So these guys can be in the front and block the enemy advance, shoot them with the bows, and then these can filter in from behind and share a square with 2 of these. Like look how like this guy has great stats, right? 13 attack. So like they can fill a square with this, and it adds to the survivability of the 2 Bakemono, like we talked about before, because they won't be targeted as much, and it makes the square more killy, right? Because you have more attacks, right? So like they're the best example of Shinuyama because they have an easy access to um, size 2 recruitables, right? But theoretically, any nation with size 4 can do this if they find the Bakemono independent population type, right? Okay, so Shinuyama, I'd say, benefits from the size changes big time. All right, Machaka, middle age. So we looked at this before, but the spider in Dom 5 was size 5, so he could not fill a square or share a square with anybody. But now it's size 7. So they can fit a square with a human, like this guy, for example, size 3, so they can share a square. Or you can share a square with skeletons, right? Because like all these guys who random death, they can do the skelly spam, and they can share a square with the spider knight, right? Um, and like this is a good unit because he's got the web, so he can stand web speeding, and then the either the human infantry in like in the early game or like skeletons later will just filter in and share a square with him, which will help, right? So I think they got the buff. Oh yeah, while we talk about Machaka, in Dom 5, people would do the repel blessed on the Black Hunter. You can't do that anymore. Because look, size 9, huge, like elephant size mount, but he has a 3 on the lance. Oh, they changed this because it was a spear, I think. And you could do a repel. You could definitely do a repel bless in 5. You can't do that now. Even if the size changes didn't happen, they changed this to a lance. Anyway, okay, so Machaka, I would say, benefits from this change in size and gives more use case to the Spider Knight, right? Okay. Let's see. Hinnom. Hinnom. Where is it? Actually, I wanted to talk about Ashdod. I wrote the wrong thing down, but we can still talk about this while we're looking at them, right? So, Rephites, size 7, they can now fit a square with a human or a skeleton, which they could not in Dom 5. And then your Avite troops, right? So, like 2 size 4, he could share a square with the Imp, and you have like a easy access to Imp spam, right? Okay. Okay, but now let's go to Ashdod. That's really who I meant to talk about because I think they received a big buff. Okay, so all your Gileite, what are these? Like Lesser Rephaim, they're all now size 6, right? But the Edomite is 4. So now this one can fill in the squares with these, right? So like that was not possible in Dom 5 because these were 4 and these were 3. And both of these units are like good at repelling or like decent at repelling. So in like an early game, you can mix these together. You can also put like the Anakites with a skeleton or a human to reduce the number of times they get targeted. So that's a change. But interestingly enough, oh, it's not them. It is Hinnom. Sorry, 1 second. Hinnom. Melkar is size 8. So, like, he's even bigger than the troop version. So, it's an interesting change. Okay, so then let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay, so middle-aged Flagra. The Gigante can no longer be trampled by air or earth elementals. They were size 5 in Dom 5, and now they cannot be trampled by the large air elemental. Okay, let's see. Oh yes, EA Agartha definitely want to talk about them. Okay, so all your ancient ones are size 6. They were 4 in Dom 5. And your regular troops are size 4. They were size 3 in Dom 5, right? So now one ancient one can share a square with like a cavern guard, who's like a decent scales troop, right? And that will really help lower the attack, a number of attacks that they take, right? So this is like a 40% dodge buff on this guy in essence. Like, right, like nowhere does it say that, right? But like in Dom 5, if you could only have one of him face off against 3 humans, right? So all 3 humans would attack him, and he has to make rolls against all of them, right? So now, if Ancient One is sharing with the Cavern Guard, for example, 40% on average will target this one, so he will take less attacks, right? So that's a benefit to him. Let's see. Oh yeah, so this is hard to show without the Mod Inspector, but okay, so Jaguar Warrior, so size 3, when they shapeshift, they go to 4 in the Jaguar shape, right? So let's say you have 3 of these in a square, right? One of them gets hit enough to turn into the Jaguar, right? So like in Dom 5, the Jaguar was size 3, so they would move, if 3 of these were in a square and they move forward, and the Jaguar could only share a space with 1, right? But now the size 4 Jaguar can share a space with 2 of these who have not transformed. Again, it seems like a very minor difference, but like it reduces number of attacks, increases the density of how many units are in one square. Okay. Okay. All the monkey nations have been improved with the size system. Okay. So 2 Bandar can now have Makarta in their space, right? So they're size 2. So like a Shinuyama, this is a nation that has access to size 2 and 4 in all their recruitables. I guess in this case also the Yakashas are size 4, so they can all share a space with Markata. So like these have a high defense, so like, they suck, but what you do is like you could put a row of them with a Bandar or the Yavanas, right? So they will like filter through and reduce the number of attacks these guys get, right? And then like in MA, where is it, Bandar? So like you can put these archers in the front as a blocking unit, right? Because they have a good protection and a decent melee, right? So like they can be in the front of your army, right? Shooting, and then the Markata like a filter through, and they take the hits from the cavalry and the other troops, and then mages can be putting buffs on the Bandar, so they make a like that's a strategy where like you have a heavy blocking archer who gets tons of buffs, and then when he runs out of ammunition he moves forward, right? But this will help because the Markata or swarm bugs can filter through the front line, right, to kind of slow down the enemy, so these guys can shoot them at like close range, right? Okay. Oh yeah. So all the Celtic boys are crying. Marverni. So like in Dom 5, you had the popular strategy of the larger bless, because it was not. It was a passive, so it was active all the time. you could have a not bear, boar apocalypse, right? So you have like boars everywhere, and um, they don't need to be blessed, right? So you could have a mundane commander moving around tons of boars that would trample everything because they would go from size 3 to 4, right? Well, boars with are now size 4, right? So with the larger, they only go up to size 5, and now they can no longer trample cavalry unless you put like enlarge spells on them to make them even bigger, right? So like now, if you want your boars to trample cavalry, uh, you have to put bring a mages to cast the enlarge. So like this is definitely a debuff for the boar spam. I'm sure people will discover other strategies with them, but like you can't really do the larger boar spam as easily. Like they will still trample humans, but like not the cavalry mounts, right? And they also don't affect the centaur, right? So Pangaea, uh, all the centaur are size 5. Oh yeah, so like you can still do the repel build on the centaur if you want to, uh, because the centaur is not the man riding a horse; he is the horseman. So like he with a larger bless will go up to size 6, and then he gets the +1 length, and now he can be a repel. Like I don't know how popular that is, but you can still do it. Where you can't do it with the other spear cavalry. Um, so while we're talking about Pangaea, Minotaur size 4, so there's going to be some they have even less utility with their trample now. Uh, but you could argue that like the trample is not super effective on such a small unit anyway, so you'd rather them use their axe. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, so all their troops are size 5. So like in Dom 5 they were 3, and a lot of the size 3 troops went up to size 4 in Dom 6, but not them. For some reason they went up to 5. So like a funny thing you can do, I'm not saying you should, but like uh what is it? Like this guy, let's say he is like Earth 2 or Air 2, you could put trample boots on him. Uh and he can now, because he's size 5, trample size 4 units, right? So like he can trample Bandar, he can trample Bakemono Sho, like in Middle Age, or I mean Dai Bakemono. He can trample Avite troops, right? Like this would not be possible in Dom 3 because he was size 3. You'd have to enlarge him. So you could do that. I'm not saying you should, but like you could. It's just like a funny case. So like because the Earth troops are all size 5, they can't share any space with uh, like a swarm. So you have easy access to a good swarm on this nation, but like they cannot share a space, the bugs, with any of your Earth troops. Like some people will say, who cares? But like it's just something I'm pointing out. Okay, Abysia, huge, right? 2 burning ones, even with the -2 formation fighter, they can now be in 1 square. This is good and bad. Okay, so like the good thing is you have 2 in 1 square, so they're doing more heat, more attacks in that 1 square, but you're covering less space, right? Um, so uh, in Dom 5, you would get a bunch of them, and they would be in a square by themselves, and they would cover more for the front line, and now they can't. But this will improve their attack density and increase the overlapping heat auras. So that's a big change for EA Abysia with the new size system. Let's see. Oh yeah. Okay, so let's talk about okay, so size 6 javelin troops, right? So like let's say Famoria, right? Oh, they're not the best example. Uh, hold on, let's look at Jotun or Utgard, right? Okay. All right, so um, this guy, right? Size 6. He um, has a very long range on the javelin, so he can throw it uh, and then move forward to take the space of infantry if you or skeletons, right? So like, if these are putting out like in a communion tons of skeletons, the skeletons will move through the javelins, right? So like they'll filter through. The skeletons get to the front, and they make a front line of 3 skeletons per square, or some of these humans in the earlier game. And then these guys are throwing at 21 range, which is a lot. But then when they're done, now with the changes in the size with the displacement, they can move forward because they're size 6, and they will take the space after they're done throwing their javelins. They will take the space of the smaller humans or skeletons, so they can filter forward, right? They won't get stuck behind skeleton spam. Same with the Phlegra. The Cyclops, right? They can throw their javelins and then move forward to take the space of the Helots, right? If you wanted to. I'm not saying you need to, but you can, right? Okay. Yeah, I think that's everything. There's obviously going to be more examples I didn't even think of, but I think that the changes to the system of size are exciting. You're going to see a lot more combinations of units that you could not before. Overall, I think it's an improvement. Some people will say like this is such a minutia, but like I love getting in the how they say in the weeds, right? Like I love getting in the weeds, like discovering different combinations of troops to fill the size. The density is so important in a combat. So this will be a lot more interesting stuff you can do in Dom 6. Okay, thanks so much for listening, and if you have any additional thoughts, please comment. Thank you.